Hey guys, Zen Burro here, and looks like my camera is a little above because I got a new TV. But anyway, I'm here with the movie, and it's, I think, one of the best war films that has ever been made since maybe Saving Private Ryan. It's 1917, which was directed by Sam Mendes, who previously he directed the fourth Daniel Craig 007 film, Skyfall, which I also liked. He was also the writer on this, along with Christy Wilson Carnes. And this film stars Dean Charles Chapman, George McKay, who formerly known as Ron Weasley from the Harry Potter films, and Benedict Cumberbatch makes an appearance. Daniel Mays and Colin Firth are also in this film. So this film takes place during the events of World War One, which is an era of history which I think is underappreciated. Well, because you couldn't have World War Two without World War One, which I always thought was weird because there seems to be this fascination with the era of World War Two in all types of media, whether it's film, video games, novels. Yeah, it's just really popular. I think it's because the Nazis are so universally despised that it's a nice little conflict of good versus evil. You know, it's clear cut. World War One, I think, was a lot more gray. And by gray, I mean that it was, so historically, it's like a war where these great European powers, you had Great Britain, France, you had Italy, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, which was considered a dual monarchy at the time. I know it's weird. And I still have to do more research as to how that political system even thrived. You also had Germany, which was at the height of its powers, and Russia, as well as a lot of other smaller countries which were involved. And around this time, before the war started, which was 1914, you had this giant alliance system where the all the great European powers had these treaties and pacts with other nations where if one nation gets attacked, then it starts a chain reaction where all these other nations have to respond. So you had Italy, Germany, and Austria-Hungary on one side, and France and Great Britain and Russia on the other. I'm making it more simplistic than it actually was. It was actually very complex, and prior to the war even starting, there were a bunch of smaller wars that kind of influenced how this war began. And there were a lot of political tensions. A lot of statesmen were trying to avoid a conflict of this scale, but it happened anyway. And because of an assassination of a Austria-Hungarian prince who was going to ascend to the throne. I don't know if he was a prince, but he was the next in line, and he got assassinated because of certain political beliefs he had. And this caused a chain reaction which led to this quote-unquote Great War, as it was called. It wasn't called World War One back then, well, because who would have thought World War Two would happen after this? So yeah, that's a little historical background, and this is where 1917 takes place. It takes place in the year 1917. And the war ended around 1918. I forgot which month, but that's historically that's how it's traditionally ended. And then you had the Spanish plague after that, or Spanish flu epidemic. And One of the things about this film that I really like is it shows the harsh realities of war in a way which I think other films have not, and even some video games have not. There's death and destruction and all kinds of things. So yeah, um, it's not a pretty film, and it's very intense. It's made to look like one continuous shot, and I am very interested to see how Mendes did that. Also, an interesting thing is this film is based on Mendes's grandfather's um, his stories about World War One because his grandfather served in it, and so it's a fictional story, but it's based on a real life account or one man's mention of like how this war was. There was all types of poisonous gas being used, trench warfare, which basically it's old tactics and new technology because you had the Industrial Revolution before that, and it was basically an arms race leading up to this conflict. So you had these armies trying out different things like machine guns, where soldiers would charge, but then the enemy would just have machine guns and mow them down. And there was barbed wire. It was a brutal war, and not very. It's the film kind of reflects this kind of cynical look of war, where things are just meaningless, and that's kind of what the attitude was after the war. If you study history or you've read authors who wrote like in this time period between World War One and Two, there was like this general sense of nihilism and like unease because no one no one was really expecting a war with so much death and so much um, yeah. So I'm just gonna cut this short and say that you need to watch this film if you like war movies or you're a history buff or you just want to experience a human story in the middle of a destructive conflict, which the film does a good job of making it seem like this is one sketch of a much larger thing, and yeah, it's really cool. Well, I wouldn't say cool, but it's very insightful. So yeah, 1917, check it out. If it's still in theaters, I would recommend that. But yeah, it's really good, and I think if this is your cup of tea, you'll like it. And this has been Zen Burro, and I'll see you guys next time at the movies.